Good morning. I think it's still morning. We're on the cusp of afternoon here. I did do a recording this morning, but it was not for this page. It was actually for the page I have for our little free pantry, because it occurred to me that there are people who have been supporting the pantry who actually don't have a full idea of what the pantry looks like, or who have never been there in person. And there's also people who are finding us who are unsure about how the whole thing works. And occasionally I will get someone knock on my door and ask if it's okay to be there because we're a private residence that has a community space. And like, I realize how weird that may sound around here, but imagine if we all, right, had more community space and we all signed up to devote some space, like those of us who have the time and the ability and the land to grow some produce, and we all shared and came together as a community. Like, what a beautiful space that would be. So anyway, that was my morning recording, was just giving people a tour of the pantry and kind of explaining how it works and explaining why it's important to me, and a little bit of an appeal for help, because that is my work in this life. My work in this life is to ask for help and not feel like I need to do everything myself, and to really feel seen and held and loved and safe, and to create all of those things for myself. So creating that safety and grounding for myself so I don't need to rely on other people, which gets really tricky when your work is also to ask for help, right? And so it's this constant balance and evaluation of where is this coming from, right? And what do I actually need in this moment? And really feeling into what feels true. And so I'm like forever checking myself and checking in with myself, and trying to evaluate, right, where I am on that spectrum, and where I'm making decisions from. Am I making decisions from fear, or am I making decisions from love? And as you get into whatever your practice is for connecting yourself, because, right, I have practices I teach, but at the end of the day, you live in your body and you know what works best for you. And I don't know of any people that the practices I teach don't work for, but there is some personal preference of use among them. And at the end of learning all of these tools, it's really up to you to ultimately decide how to use them, and when to use them, and which ones to pick, right? Like, we give you the toolbox, but you get the preference on which tools to use when, and the connection to self to be able to figure that out. Like, that is the goal for the end of the program. And so, having done a lot of that work, yeah, this is the constant of, does this feel like it's coming from love, or does it feel like it's coming from fear? And sometimes even coming from love, right, also feels fear, but fear of unknown feels different than like a shrinking fear. And as you deepen your practice or your practices, and you get in touch with your inner wisdom, and you really learn to feel into your emotions and feel into your body and exist in your body and trust your body, because your body has its own knowing, you can learn the difference, right? You can learn the difference in terms of where you're operating from, and when you are not in the heart anchored space, right? And when you're from the spinning upper place, or in the fear, right? The thinking fear, you can change course, right? You can drop back into your heart, and the beautiful thing is you can do that as many times as you need to. And yeah, and so for me, I've gotten to a point where I could tell the difference most of the time pretty easily between whether the right, when they talk about the call is coming from inside the house, whether the call is coming from the ego or the call is coming from the heart, right? It's this staying out of here and staying down here. And in the beginning, it could be a lot of ping-ponging between the two, but really training myself to recognize when this is kicking on and get back to here, because that is where all of the good juicy stuff comes from, and that is where we're co-creating with the universe, right? We're never co-creating with the universe from here. It's always coming from here, right? From our heart. Our heart is our access point, to, right, not just to our inner wisdom, but to connecting with what they call Christ consciousness, or the force, or the universe, or God, or our ancestors, right? Like that collective consciousness. When you want to tap into that wisdom, you do that from your heart space. So yeah, just checking in today to say, I see you, and I see you in your divine essence, even on your messiest, hardest days, right? And your worth is undeniable, and your light is undeniable. However you're feeling, and however the inner script or the ticker tape in your head is spinning things, right? Like, coming from a place of being anchored in my truth, right? My path is recognizing that divine essence in everything else. So connecting with people's soul essence rather than, right, whatever is showing up that's kind of clouding it. And that's a beautiful space to be, when you can get to a point where you take nothing personally, and right, and that's not like I never take anything personally ever, because it gets a lot trickier when it's people in my inner circle, but people who are not like in my immediate family, right? I could be like, oh, like, wow, that person's really suffering. Like, oh, wow. Like, your inner dialogue must be really tough to deal with, right? Like, when somebody's getting like really nitpicky with me, or they're picking me apart, I'm like, wow, like, I am sorry for you. Like, your inner critic must be really loud, because I am now in a place where I have kicked up, I won't say all of my stuff because you never finish, but I've kicked up a lot of the big stuff, and I've processed that, and I'm like good with me, and right, like, I love my shiny self, and I get that I have shadow and I have flaws, but that's not who I am. That's me tipped out of balance, and then I anchor myself back in. And right, to see somebody who is disconnected from their light, and who, right, is projecting on other people, and to just be able to witness and be like, wow, this is not about me. Like, that is you, and I'm just gonna send you some violet light and hold you in love. And yeah, like, I am sorry, friend. Like, that is a beautiful, like, that is a free space to be in, and it's absolutely worth the work, right? Like, I remember how hard that used to be, to like care so much about what other people thought of me, or to like take that really personally, right? Where it all felt personal. And now I would say very little feels personal. And these are the conversations I have with my children when people aren't nice to them, right? When people are mean, and they like take that on as affecting their worth. And I'll be like, well, when are you mean? right? When do you say unkind things? Like, when are you unkind to your brother? Like, what drives that? And it's like, oh, like when I'm jealous, right? Or when I'm angry, or when I don't feel good about myself. I'm like, okay, what do you think was going on with the person who was mean to you today? And then it's like that light bulb moment, right? Oh, like that wasn't about me. And does it mean releasing people from accountability? Like, absolutely, absolutely not. And you can insert the word that you know I didn't use. Um, yeah, absolutely not. It doesn't excuse people. But also, we don't need to pick up their baggage and carry it for them. We can, right? We can maintain our sovereignty in that situation, which is what I try to teach my kids and be like, don't talk to me that way, right? It's not okay. And then remove yourself from the situation, or seek an authority figure. But try to handle it yourself first, right? Because I don't want them to feel disempowered or feel like they need to rely on a grown-up to intervene. I want them to feel like they're empowered to handle their situations. So yeah, like, don't talk to me that way. That's not acceptable. And if you're going to talk to me that way, then I don't want to be in this space with you, and I don't want to play with you, and right, and leave it at that. And to say that calmingly, and to even say that with love, and be like, yeah, go handle your stuff. And that's kind of, right, how we parent, right? If my kids are out of line, I'm like, hey, I love you, and this is not an acceptable way to talk to me. And so maybe you can remove yourself from this room, and you can come back when you can right, speak to me in a more respectful way. Or, right, if there is something that you need from me to help you regulate, then I am happy to provide that. And please know that this is not acceptable, right? Because I am connected to my light, and I am not going to, right, put up with other people treating me as less than, or being cruel or unkind, right? Because it's my job to hold that boundary. It is my job to teach people how to treat me. And so what I am trying to instill in my children is teaching people how to treat them, right? And not taking everything so personally. And yeah, and I think that that's, right, we're all learning that all of the time, and we all need reminders. And there are a lot of people who get to adulthood, and like, that's still really tricky because we're not taught how to boundary as children. And we're not really taught how to do it as adults. And so when I used to work in healthcare, like, that was a revolutionary thing to, right, like, teach my patients how to say no to things that weren't serving them. Teach them how to be protectors of their time. Teach them how to be protectors of their energy. And so, yeah, doing this work is not that different. Because I think always I have been interested in what are the barriers to you showing up well for yourself, right? What are those barriers? And then let's work together and figure out how to reduce or eliminate them. And in the coaching world, and in the healing world, which is what I am currently in training to do the deeper levels of healing, right? The primary barrier for people, right, is this fear that is linked to past trauma. And so in the coaching world, we deal with the fear. In the healing world, which is the training I'm in, we're learning to deal with the trauma. And so, yeah, it's addressing that fear. There is fear linked to having boundaries, right? If I boundary effectively, I'm going to lose people. And if that is the case, then those were not your people. Because boundaries are just a way of letting people know your needs. And like what your edges are in terms of, this is my bandwidth. This is how I need people to show up for me, right? Because we, as much as I hate the origins of love languages, of where that stuff came from, and I'm not going to go through that today. You could look it up. We could discuss it another time. People do have different ways of accepting, like sending and receiving love. And so it's knowing those things and communicating them. So I feel like we talked around the universe this morning. And at the end of all of it, right, I always hope that you've found something useful. And if you found your way to this video, then chances are there was something the universe guided you to hear. And I also hope you always walk away feeling seen and loved and valued, even if you can't manifest that in yourself right now. Just accepting that you're doing your best, and yeah, and maybe graduating to a point of feeling lovable, like, and actually feeling that like it's true. So if you're not there yet, that's okay. Wherever you're at on the path is okay. And trusting that you are where you're supposed to be, and you will get there when you're meant to get there. And if we are meant to work together, then I'm trusting that that will happen. Because the only thing that I can control in this life is my breathing. And in controlling my breathing, I can return myself to this present moment, and that is everything. Because I can regulate my nervous system through my breathing, and that makes life so much easier to handle. So wishing you the most joyful, peaceful day. And if it is not, I hope you can trust that whatever you are in, whatever stretch of hard, will pass, and there is more joy in your future. And if joy is difficult for you to access, then trusting that is something that can be rectified, right? That through showing up for yourself and through your own healing path, that you could get there. It's building up the security in yourself to be vulnerable, right? Because joy is vulnerability. So sending you all of my love, and we will talk soon. Have a great day.